Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We begin nearly 5,000 years ago with the formation of the first empire in history. The most elite warriors in Akkad are the king's vanguard called the Black Scorpions, and the most renowned of them is Ashur. The Akkadian tells his son Mathayus he doesn't want him joining the Scorpions, but that boy's got the eye of the tigress in him. He ignores everything his father said and goes down to the city arena where General Sargon is holding the tryouts. This is the cream of the crop apparently, and they aimlessly beat on one another until Mathayus recognizes his friend through her disguise. Since this is a boys' club, Sargon goes to throw Layla out, but Matt thinks it's a good idea to hit this ginormous man with a stick. He then evades capture well enough to make a good career out of being a courier if things here don't work out, but is eventually captured. I think Sargon plans to behead this boy, but his dad comes to the rescue and a duel between him and the big bad Baldo ensues. He's always been jealous of Ashur's fame, and since he can't beat him, orders the guards to arrest the whole family. The king steps out and says none of that, let Ashur go free, but his son must join the Black Scorpions because they're clearly lacking the talent. Sargon's eyes turn black and he wastes no time getting revenge by sending a dark cloud to their home as they sleep at night. It covers Ashur with a swarm of scorpions, so the boy vows to avenge his father before this man is even dead yet. Sargon then trains his own assassin for the next 6 years with desert push-ups and sit-ups, nothing too outlandish or barbaric. One bow staff transition later and the grown-up Mathayus completes his scorpion training and gives us his best people's eyebrow. The graduates return to Akkad and show off their fancy new scorpion tattoos as their families celebrate. Among the crowd are Mathayus's mother Inanna and his younger brother Noah, as well as his childhood friend Layla. To no one's surprise, Sargon is the new king after the previous one mysteriously slipped over in the shower and landed on a sword. A true villain would cut down Mathayus right now after making him do all that training, but this one can't even remember who he is. He's like, didn't I kill your father once? Then orders Mathayus to report to his chambers wearing his shiniest metal bra. There's little harems of women all around the palace, but the throne room is where Sargon keeps all the sweaty bald men for himself. He introduces MMA to the public, then asks Mathayus to be his personal bodyguard because he was the best swordsman in his graduating little Scorpios class. Sargon learns that this is Ashur's son, but still thinks he will be loyal enough to stab a knife through his own hand like Mr. Crazy over here. As a signing bonus, new recruits get to lay with the king's concubines, but only from the still-to-be-tested harem out by the loading bay. In the morning, the king asks Mathayus if his sword is polished and if he knows how to swing it, but Manie with the fatty doesn't kiss and tell. He must mean literally, because Sargon wants him to execute his brother to prove his loyalty, and he also talked crap about the king. We all do, so Mathayus cuts his chains, then goes on to kill the entire throne room of soldiers because the greatest warriors in the kingdom can't defeat a day one graduate. He then hurls a spear at Sargon, however the magician stops it midair and directs it back at him only to impale his last bald man. Mathayus does the smartest thing he could and grabs his brother before leaping out a window and using the horse of convenience to escape the city. Sargon, however, fires an arrow that constitutes as cheating because this thing follows them everywhere while zigzagging through the streets. The brothers are so far away when the arrow finally catches up that it's ridiculous, but it hits Noah, which seems like a waste of all that magic. Sargon could have curved it around into the actual threat, but instead all he kills is the brother and some peasant's week's wage in milk. When reaching the port, Mathayus notices someone following him, so he smacks her in the face with a fish, but it's just Layla. She's also trying to escape, but Matt says go home because they aren't children anymore and apparently women aren't a thing for men. While Layla is left confused and smelling like mackerel, Mathayus books a passage on a ship to Egypt, but she follows him. Once at sea, he reveals his plan to ask the pharaoh for the spear of Osiris because Sargon won't be able to catch that one. An eavesdropping poet called Ari says, well, actually the spear only works on Egyptian monsters or Akkadians when they're combined with horrible CGI. It can also be caught relatively easily, so he says the sword of Damocles can cut through anything, and he happens to know where to find it. We're no longer going to Egypt and instead visit the island of Knossos because the sword is located in the underworld and there's an entrance here. It's guarded by the beastly Minotaur at the center of a labyrinth, so Ari shows them the way up to King Minos's temple. Layla can walk right up to the soldiers because she's simply an unassuming girl, then beats the crap out of them because she's Akkadian. Mathayus, on the other hand, completely forgoes all stealth when it comes to his fight scene and demonstrates his ability to plank. All of these guards that they kill should have just let the intruders pass because they fall straight into the king's dungeon anyway. It's full of prisoners waiting to be fed to the Minotaur, so Mathayus tries to rally them together, but nobody wants to fight that thing. The only other prisoner willing to slay the beast is Layla, but she's also the only other person in here with a sword, so that probably helps. Fear is the only thing keeping these people trapped inside the cage, and when the Akkadians leave, Ari is swift to close the door behind them. The pair come across a man chained to the wall named Fong who's so terrified he forgets to thank his saviors and just runs off. It makes complete sense when you see the Minotaur because this thing is a horrifying 10-foot mix of practical effects and CGI. It does that movie thing where it defeats a person just enough that it could kill them then moves on to the other one to do the same. Layla is chased through the halls until getting horned up the coochie by the mythical monster and almost stomped on the ground. Before it kills her, the prisoners confront the Minotaur having rallied behind Pollux and begin hurling rocks because they didn't really think this through. It's kind of a roll of the dice when fighting this thing of either getting head-butted back 20 feet or impaled on a horn. Our resident poet soothes Manie by playing his flute, so Mathayus takes the moment to drive his sword through the monster's back. With the creature dead and Layla's groin all busted up, we could really use more soldiers, but Pollux says his debt to Ashur is repaid. I beg to differ since he just threw a few rocks and not even to save Mathayus, but Ari convinces the mercenaries that there's treasure in the underworld. He also convinces Fong that there's a shortcut to China, so they enter the center of the labyrinth and the walls begin to disappear. They're all transported through a portal to a desert in the underworld but are now trapped atop a tower like a gaggle of Gandalfs. Without any eagles around, Mathayus takes a leap of faith with no indications that it will work and reveals the tower as an illusion and himself as lucky. As they're walking through the desert, large thorns burst from the sand and the environment changes into a dark swamp. If you notice everyone is dirty after this, it's because Ari suggests they soil themselves to blend in with the corpses. You would think that walking might give them away, but the fallen soldiers in these dead marshes are all still moving around. There's also grape trees here straight out of Evil Dead that carry away one of the mercs to be vine-elated behind some bushes. The ironically named Baldo notices some treasure at the foot of a cave, but it's just bait left out by a creature that eats him. We see a few of these things around, but they never pop out again, and Pollux is just like, huh, where did all my men go? The rest of the party enters Skeletor's vacation home and they meet the ruler of this part of the underworld, Astarte. She's the goddess of love and war and orders them to kneel, but Mathayus has a bad knee from all that planking between walls. Astarte tries to seduce him instead, but any waif with a wet patch could entice this man, so Layla says, try that crap on me. None of the men in the room have any objection, but somehow this tiny girl can block this goddess's slap, so Astarte challenges her to a duel. Astarte puts on her fighting gear and plucks a stalagmite to use as a spear, but the men get bored and wander off. This sorceress isn't all she's cracked up to be, so during this time Ari and Fong locate the sword of Damocles floating in the air. They play a bit of human Jenga to acquire it as Layla distracts Artie while I think Mathayus is just hiding behind some rocks. Astarte begins to lose, so she says screw fighting fair and uses her dark magic to open up a hole into Hades' toilet. Mathayus decides to finally show himself to talk her out of flushing, but the witch wants to make him her concubine in exchange for Layla's life. Spiny backs aren't really his thing, so Astarte drops Layla, but Matt tackles her to safety and the intruders all flee with the sword. They run back to the platform, but the greedy Pollux falls behind while collecting a ruby ring from the finger of a corpse. Apparently the living can only survive in the underworld for an hour, so he dissolves while the rest teleport back to the labyrinth. With the sword in hand they sail back to Akkad for revenge, while one of Sargon's girls turns into quite the angry Astarte. She orders him to retrieve her sword, then uses her blood to tattoo a scorpion on his head, but it isn't just for fun. When the heroes arrive they find everyone gathering at the arena to be mass sacrificed, so Matt and Ari go to the palace while Layla and Fong stay here to help.
Come on.
An archer activates a machine in the center of the arena that dumps oil into the water supply that sprays out of the statues covering the population. They prepare to light all of the trapped people on fire, so Layla and Fong fight their way through a soggy helping of guards. Fong is catching flaming arrows out of midair, move over Memnon and flings them back at the archers until a whole volley of them ignite in the center. Along with Layla they stuff sand into the running channels to extinguish the fires while avoiding any arrows fired from above. They eventually succeed despite not understanding each other, while Mathayus reaches the palace and destroys the guards' swords with a single swing. Sargon really needs to employ some better help because they all just give up, so he impersonates Ashur to do it himself. He tricks Matt to get close enough and disarm him of the sword, then they begin fighting while Ari writes himself a bestseller. Sargon refuses to use his axe, opting for a fistfight, but Mathayus flails his legs around in that familiar Akkadian style. Ari gets a hold of the sword but is bribed by Sargon with jewels, so tosses him the weapon and walks out a rich man. However, the first swing of this thing shatters like a dry noodle as Ari re-enters with the real sword and throws it to Mathayus. Not sure why he didn't just throw him the real one first, or why there was even an exact replica lying on the table, but now Sargon is worried. He reminds Mathayus of his oath as a black scorpion, so he hands in his resignation by burning off the tattoo. The king transforms and retreats into the shadows, then re-emerges as a giant invisible scorpion and begins destroying his bedroom. The entire fight is Mathayus avoiding deathly blows while fleeing for his life and the building burning to the ground around him. Outside the temple he's knocked down the stairs and drops the sword, but while avoiding being crushed to death he's poisoned by the venom. He manages to reveal Sargon's location by throwing a pot of oil on the scorpion, and then when he sees his chance runs for the sword. The scorpion leaps at him, so all Mathayus has to do is point and impale as the creature lands on the blade and reverts back into Sargon as he dies. Just then the goddess who's always hanging around appears and takes back her stolen sword, asking why she shouldn't just kill the thief right now. Since Mathayus will eventually go to the underworld anyway, Astarte lets him live but jokes on her because Matt goes on to sell his soul to Anubis. In the morning Mathayus wakes up recovering from his wound with a nice wasabi paste made by Fong. He kisses Layla as they're now official, I guess, and a new king is crowned who is apparently the son of the previous legitimate one. The town celebrates not being burned alive and Layla says she wants to settle down and leave the life of a warrior. However, the Sargon venom running through his veins makes it so that Mathayus can't concur and he abandons her for a life of adventurous bloodshed. And the movie ends.